Introducing variants so late into the story, wait, hold on, can you read it? You can mostly read it, was just lazy and pointless. Okay, so this has 176 updates. So not a lot of updates, but a relatively decent amount of updates. So this isn't a hot take. I don't think it's a particularly hot take either. Seeing walkers returning to places they once knew, them using objects and walking fences early on was cool, but that was obviously due to how Darabont imagined the walkers to work. So yeah, this is something that people always... I even thought about doing a video about this. I thought about doing like a video of most popular misconceptions about The Walking Dead, right? So Chandler wanted to leave the show, the walkers are decaying, like there's a bunch of these weird things that people have just come up with as headcanons and they're spreading everywhere, right? A lot of these things are completely false. This, like, smart walkers, 100% a Darabont thing, it has absolutely nothing to do with them decaying. Because, like, if they're decaying, every single person who would have died in the series would have been an intelligent walker. They're not, you know? So, no, it's 1,000,000% a Darabont thing. But when he was replaced, the whole idea was dropped, and we didn't really see anything similar for 10 whole seasons after that. Then suddenly in Season 11, they are introduced, the characters go, surprise Pikachu face, this is my favorite part. No further thought is given to them. I know there's the CRM, and this concept will be further explored in future spin-offs, but the CRM was first set up as early as Season 8, and there were still no signs of such variants for years to come after. I mean, I know, why are you looking for sense in a world where undead are up and walking? So this is something I hate that people say, you know? I sometimes do this myself, but I do it kind of half-jokingly. The fact that you can say we live in a fantasy universe, right? And, you know, why are you looking for sense in a world where zombies are walking? Well, there is still, even in a fantasy world, there is a set of rules that we follow, you know? That's exactly why people say magic systems can be bad, because you establish a magic system and then break that magic system. So I think this argument is just like faulty on a fundamental level. I don't like it. But still, isn't it a bit ridiculous that for all those years, our characters have never once encountered these smart walkers, then all of a sudden, they keep popping up out of nowhere? Alright, so I agree with most of this. Especially the fact that in Season 11, I believe it was Aaron, 99% sure it's Aaron, who was just like, yeah, I've heard stories of these. And everyone else is just like surprised Pikachu face. I think this is my favorite. I swear this isn't a alt of mine. This is not an account of mine. This go surprised Pikachu face is my favorite part of this entire thread because that's literally what happened. Everyone is like, what? What do you mean smart walkers? We've never heard of these. And then they're just like, the worst part is that they're not addressed in the main show, you know? And this is also something Walking Dead fans do a lot, and I think is silly. People are like, well, it was meant to set up the spin-offs. But criticizing the main show because it's never followed up is a valid criticism. Like, this is a problem with the main show, that you introduce a concept and don't even mention it, you know? It is a huge retcon, and I think it's perfectly fine to criticize. But we'll talk about it, because I don't think it's that simple. That's the whole point of soft and hard magic. Science is hard magic, so it has rules to be followed for continuity. Exactly, right? It doesn't matter how much fantasy you have. If you have established the rules, you shouldn't be breaking them. And whenever you break them, well, I mean, at that point, because that's the thing. If you break the rules you have established yourself, it breaks the story. Because why does anything matter if you can just change the rules? Like, why does anything at all even matter anymore if the solution is always, well, we can bend the rules, you know? Like, a fight where you know the powers of two people will be a fight between those two powers. If one of them suddenly whips out an entirely new power, I mean, what was the point of the whole fight? You know, there's like no stakes there, because it's just like, oh, Deus Ex Machina, basically. Anyway, let's read through the thread. I've got a lot of thoughts about this. As I said, I'm not a huge fan of smart walkers, but I did leave a comment here somewhere deep in here. It's probably been downvoted because, you know, I left a slightly negative comment. Anyway, it's ironic to see them return to Darabont's leftovers after depleting Kirkman's storylines, the CDC, the variants, the mystery helicopters. This is so funny to me, because it's 100% true. It's like they went back to Season 1, and we're like, hold on. Hold on. We retcon these things out of existence, that they don't matter. You know what? Let's retcon them back in. Why not? It doesn't matter that they don't really fit. It's fine. And you know, the CDC stuff, even the user here, the CDC stuff was fire in my opinion. The CDC stuff for me, I even talk about this in one of the upcoming videos. I think the CDC stuff was great because it established the bleakness of the world. It basically told us that there is no hope out there. You know, it wasn't about giving us a cure. It was about the complete opposite. It was about saying that we don't know anything. There is nothing out there. Everyone is dead. And that was perfect. Until it wasn't. And that's the problem. I think doing these gotcha moments is the biggest problem with late Walking Dead. That is 1,000,000% my biggest gripe with the entire TV universe of The Walking Dead. I talk about it a lot in the retrospectives as well, but they really, really lost the tone and the vision of the series, in my opinion. That's like the biggest thing. Difference is breaking rules versus expanding the rules. Exactly. And that is, I think, what sets apart great authors from bad authors. A great author will go back to their own work, pick up something that they planted there, and expand on it in the future, right? And some might call it a retcon, but if they use it intelligently, most people wouldn't even pick up on the fact that it's technically a retcon, right? Because the act of a retcon just means that you retroactively write something into a story. A lot of people sort of attach a negative connotation to the word because it sort of means that you didn't plan something out, right? But I don't like that way of thinking. Like, yes, a retcon inherently does mean that you haven't really thought about something that much, but going back and writing on top of something that already exists there and still making it fit, perfect. That's how you do things. And that is so great about... Let me think of like a good example. Is there a really, really good example I can think of off the top of my head? I think it's a bit of a hot take to say. I think a lot of One Piece does that, and I think Oda does that a lot. Like Mantra to Hockey, yes, that is a good example. That is a very good example. Like the fact that we can go back to episode 1, or episode 4 actually in the anime, and say that Hockey is there, even though is it not? I think it's up for debate. I think that's like the perfect example. It fits. It's not that it fits like perfectly, but it fits well. It makes sense, and that is the most important part. And again, I think that is what separates really, really good authors from sort of mediocre writers. I almost said walkers. Definitely not walkers. Shanks scaring off the Lord of the Coast. Yeah, that's a good example. I suspend my disbelief. Oh, and yeah, by the way, like this depleting Kirkman storylines, like I don't know if my comment is somewhere down here because I'm log. Oh, here we go. This. Look at this. Do you see this intelligent man? My favorite part was that I said this. Yeah, I've heard stories about them. So, I mean, this is what I always say, right? I even left this in the comments. I think it's honestly just easier to come to terms with the fact that this isn't Kirkman's Walking Dead anymore. It hasn't been for a very, very long time. I think it was around season 10 that I really realized that it's not the same story anymore. Like, not the story, but like the world isn't the same anymore. You know? When characters started to get titles, and they started to be these walking mythological beings, and they made really, really bad decisions, and they never faced any consequences. That was when I was like, this ain't it, Chief. It's fun, but this just isn't The Walking Dead anymore. And I think if you acknowledge that, I think you'll be better for it. I still struggle with that because I love The Walking Dead so much. It's one of my favorite universes and favorite stories of all time. It's not even close. Kirkman made something beautiful and something bleak and so good. And then the show, you know. But as I said, I think if you can make peace with that, the smart walkers will just shake up the formula. Because if you go back to my very, very first retrospective, I said I am so glad that they took out smart walkers. I hate it. That is literally the antithesis of what The Walking Dead was about. Regular walkers, you know? That was the point. The story is about humans. We don't have any smart walkers. The story is about how we survive this. And this is not Left 4 Dead. This is not anything like that. But now that we are into spin-off number 649, you know what? Like, sure, put them in. Why not? Well, I mean, what's the worst that can happen? I'm fully open to them at this point. If they're fun, and if they're not just dumb, like if they introduce fast walkers, let me get this, I'll say this right now. If they introduce running walkers, and Daryl is like a mega chad just walking the streets, knowing that there are sprinting walkers, that's when I'll be mad. I've always said this, if there is a story like World War Z, and if you approach it realistically, everyone dies, it's not even close. Like, sprinting zombies is just impossible to survive. Like, straight up. How are you going to survive? Like, literally 100 sprinting zombies at you. You're dead. That's it. Like, a single bite and you're dead. That's it. No shot. So, if they don't do that, then sure. Alright, let's go through some of these comments. I suspend my disbelief for a CGI tiger that knows the difference between good and evil people, so the variants aren't much of a stretch for me, to be honest. Yes, and this is, again, I say this a lot in the retrospective as well. This is something that I think is very important to note, right? You need to really, really balance that suspension of disbelief that people have, even in a story like The Walking Dead. Because The Walking Dead has many goofy elements because it comes from a comic book. Like Shiva, like most of Negan's character. All of these things are goofy, but they fit the world of The Walking Dead. They fit the vision of The Walking Dead. If you translate things and make them fit the specific medium you're going to, you can translate a lot of things you might think won't work, but they will. But there is still a very, very... It's a tightrope to walk. I'll say that. And you can even approach these things with basic fist fights, right? Like in Season 4, there is the fight between Rick and the dude with one of the claimers, and the claimer doesn't call out a single time. You know, a basic thing like a fist fight can already undermine that suspension of disbelief if you're not careful with these things. I hated the World War Z adaptation. The book was so good. The book is one of my... I think we've talked about this before. The audiobook is probably one of my favorite audiobooks of all time. It is such a good production. I do understand where you're coming from, though. Seems like a missed opportunity to showcase the variants when the show is at its peak. Yeah, I don't think so. If they introduced them midway, I think I would have just like been... I think I would have cried very salty tears. I would have been very, very sad. I don't think many people would have thought about variants of diseases until COVID happened. I kind of like the idea there being multiple types of walkers in different regions of the world. Even if it's late, it's a welcome change of scenery, in my opinion. This is basically how I approach it, right? Like, who cares at this point? We've been through all of this, the main show is done. Why not? Sure, why not? Throw them in there. I don't even know why they dropped how zombies first acted in Season 1. They were so much more threatening. We could have also had Romero zombies on TV. Well, I mean, the answer is simple, because that's just not what The Walking Dead was about, you know? So, I don't know. There's a theory about evolution. Oh yeah, I read this. I've literally no idea how true this is. I know that, like, this exists, right? This punctuated equilibrium, right? Where nothing happens, and then everything happens, right? There's, like, the boring billion or something like that in history. Like, this is just a period of time where absolutely nothing happened, and we don't know about anything that happened on Earth. So, I think it does have some truth to it, but, like, we're talking about a zombie virus, so I don't think any of this is, like, worth talking about. Season 1 was... no one really had no clue what was happening, basically. Season 1, I think Season 1 was really, really good for what it was. But like in terms of the amount of stuff that has been retconned from it, is kind of goofy, you know? And that's like another thing. You're gonna hear me talk about this a bunch very, very soon, but I think switching showrunners so much for The Walking Dead is one of those things that sort of did a lot of damage to it. Because it never had a consistent vision. Like, never. Whenever they started to find their groove, they changed showrunners. Because I feel like they had people who were really, really good with horror, like Darabont, right? I'm not the biggest fan of Darabont, I'm going to be honest. He started changing things, even though I think the changes were mostly okay. He started changing things that I don't think needed to be changed. So I don't really agree with that approach on a fundamental level, for the most part. But he was good with horror, for example, right? But then he was changed. And Season 2 was very different. And then Season 3 was a literal action movie. And then we got to Gimple, and it was an entirely different story. And then we got to Kang, and it was again a completely different story. And not in a good way. It was inconsistent. It's not that it was changing vision, and it was great. The show reinvented itself and all that. This was something that if you watch the behind the scenes a lot, you will hear them always talk about how the show is reinventing itself. And I don't think that you need to reinvent the wheel. You know? The wheel is there. We've had it for a very, very long time. The wheel is a good thing. You don't need to make it a freaking square or a cube. You don't. It works. You can add things onto it. You can make the wheel look good. You can make a better wheel. But you don't need to mess with the wheel, you know? And this is something that I feel like they tried messing with a few too many times. It's a retcon, but given a in-universe reason explanation when the show is on air, as long as... I don't think so. I don't think so. Like, again, this automatically assumes that a retcon is a bad thing, you know? When a show is on air this long, a retcon happens. I think this is just not a good way to think about retcons. Because there are many ways they could have made these things fit, I think, a bit better, you know? Instead of one of the characters... Like, honestly, if they didn't try to tease it with Aaron saying that they exist, I honestly think, I don't know, maybe this is just me. If they honestly just completely forgot about those sort of smart walkers in Season 1, and just made smart walkers a European thing, and that is it, I think it would have been fine. But I think teasing them at the end of Season 11, and then just never approaching them ever again, that's what seemed odd to me. And now, keep in mind, we've also had an entire season of Dead City, and they've never even been mentioned. It's like they don't exist. We are in a city that has one of the densest populations that we've seen in the show. There should be a ton of walkers. No one ever talks about them. It's like they don't exist. And it's again that inconsistency that I think is the bad part. It's not the fact that they exist or don't exist. It's the fact that we act as if they don't exist, even though they clearly do now. They'll face off against them sounds great, but besides retconning, the only way to introduce them, enjoy the new stories. Honestly, if we never saw the evolved walkers in the regular show. Yeah, exactly. Like if we never saw the regular, if we never saw them in the regular show and they were only a European thing, I think it would have been fine. The fact that we were just baited into thinking that they're a thing is, I think, not good. I mean, there's just a people being mad. Yeah, it's just a bunch of people being mad. But anyway, my stance on this whole thing is that obviously it is a retcon. It's a very lazy retcon. Yes, they're running out of ideas. Let's be honest. Yes, they're literally just. Oh my god, like CRM is just like, CRM is honestly one of the worst written mysteries I've ever seen in any show ever, because it's not a mystery. It's just like, do you see the 3 circles? Do you see the 3 circles here? Do you see the 3 circles here? Well, try to figure out what they mean. It's not a mystery if you're not given any clues at all, you know? I think the CRM is a bit of a joke, but I want to find out more about it, basically. We'll see what happens. Especially, like, in the late stages of Walking Dead, there are a lot of those things. I honestly think they just had so many moving pieces that they just couldn't make the story work. Where are they going to fit in the CRM when they also have... Which, by the way, like, Georgie. Like, we're going to talk about bad mysteries and things that are just forced into the story. Can we talk about Georgie and the key? There's a lot of these things in The Walking Dead that's just like... And the fact that, like, I think a lot of this... animosity towards a lot of these things also comes from the fact that they just refuse to write characters out, you know? Or rather, not that they refuse to write them out, but that they refuse to just kill them off. They always wrote them out, you know? And that's when we have that's where we have questions like, why did Maggie leave with the key, then come back and say like 2 sentences about what happened? She technically explained what happened, but that's not great writing. And same goes for literally everyone else that has left and then returned, you know? I think that's also a lot of it. I talk a lot about Rick and Michonne, you know? How they both just leave everyone behind. And now we have Daryl leaving everyone behind. I think a lot of it comes down to that. That they are just refusing to give up these characters. Basically, TLDR, I'm happy that we're gonna see Smart Walkers. It's gonna be something different. I still don't really know what kind of Smart Walkers we're going to have, because we had that running walker in World Beyond, right? So if it's like that, then again, if Daryl is being a Mega Chad, then I'm gonna be real mad. If Daryl is walking around with a flail when we have running walkers, that's when I'm gonna be mad. You better not show me Daryl with the flail when we have sprinting walkers, or better yet, with a crossbow that is like notoriously slow. Of course he's gonna have his crossbow. But like, he's got to have something else. Or the whole series needs to be based around the premise of dodging walkers. Basically, I understand why people are mad. I'm also mad. I'm not mad, I'm sad. So, you know, we'll see what happens.